Spring is here. It's time to start thinking about family fun in the outdoors. This is Chris Williams promoting my good friends at Plaza RV in Bondurant. I've now bought 2 travel trailers from this locally owned company in the past 5 years. It's completely changed my family's life. We love spending time in the outdoors, tailgating, and most of all, being together. Camping has been an awesome escape for us, and I would encourage you to think about it as well. Head over to their lot in Bondurant. They have motorhomes, travel trailers, truck trailers, fifth wheels, and more. Check them out today at PlazaRV.com. They're 100% locally owned. Tell them that Chris Williams sent you.
Heartland Flags and Gifts presents Legends and Listeners with Scott Dochterman and Chad Leistikow. Fly 'em high and fly 'em proud. Find your flag at heartlandflags.com. Breaking down the Big Ten from the Channel Seed Studios, this is Iowa Everywhere.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere. Welcome to a Final Four edition of Legends and Listeners, episode number 34 for me, Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register, and Scott Dochterman of The Athletic. You got good lighting today, Scott. We are coming to you on a Friday morning here on the Iowa Everywhere Network, and we are live from the Channel Seed Studios, live from Cleveland. Pretty cool deal, Scott, that we're in the third week of spring football, and nobody cares one single bit right now. It's all about Caitlin, Kate, Gabby, Sid, Hannah, Lisa, Jan, everyone else on the Iowa women's basketball team and the program. They'll face UConn tonight, 8:30 Central Time on ESPN, with a spot in the national championship on the line. Man, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. It's it's been a short week for me, not as bad as it was for you to go to Hades/Albany earlier this week, but it was a long drive from Iowa in the snow the first hour, and then got here a couple days ago, and it's been a short night and a lot of stuff going on. In Iowa, we're in a bubble. It's all about women's college basketball. Outside of that, we've got the Super League talk with football, so that's probably been the craziest part of it. So it's been a wild week.
Well, we are going to use today, because it's a game day edition, to really just get you ready for the matchup tonight. It's so far away. It's still more than 12 hours away as I speak here, Scott. But before we get to Iowa UConn, which, I mean, seriously, what a matchup. I mean, just thinking about it, this is the team that eliminated Caitlin Clark, Gabby Marshall, Kate Martin as freshmen in the NCAA tournament in the bubble. It's just amazing to think about how far they've come as a program to be favored tonight against the vaunted Huskies. We'll get into that matchup a little bit, but really an unbelievable moment we have to talk about. Iowa's 94-87 victory over LSU on Monday night in Albany. I mean, it was so much anticipation, so much hype for that game. Obviously, the TV viewership is off the charts, but I heard from so many fans. I did a story earlier this week, a little bit more about fan story. It was amazing. It was emotional, and it led me to believe that this was the best win in Iowa sports history, and just because of the what this team means. And so many people told me, I've never felt so anxious for a game. Not even the 2021 Iowa Penn State football game. This was they wanted this so badly. And it was really cool to see the Hawkeyes deliver on that big stage, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And I wrote kind of the same thing, but it got misconstrued a little bit on Twitter. Imagine that. But that when you look back at the history of Iowa, and both of us are well versed in it, we lived it and we've documented it, that the higher Iowa tends to fly as a program, the harder the fall is. And men's basketball, you have the Ronnie Lester situation. You have, you have the 1987 UNLV loss where you're up 20. You have all these situations. You can just name them off. Ronnie Harmon's fumbles in the Rose Bowl. That when they got on the big stage, they fell short. This time it didn't happen. This time they pushed through. And I know that there's still 2 more games potentially. And I know that if they don't win a championship, that it'll be looked upon as, oh, they got close again. But to me, playing LSU, the team that not only beat them in the national title game, but really, the unflattering situation after the fact with Angel Reese and the finger waving, and then Iowa getting unjustifiably labeled by some people a racist and all this sort of thing for no reason whatsoever, to be able to go toe to toe with LSU, a team I think that fans had their own little PTSD with, and win and fight and do it. I think whatever happens from here on out is gravy. It's not just, if they fall short tonight or Sunday, I think people can shrug that off, but because winning against LSU mattered so much.
Yeah. And it's going to be hard whenever this team loses for the whole fan base. No question about it. If it loses, I shouldn't say whenever it loses.
Yeah.
I believe this team can win a national title.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be hard. And it's kind of different. It's so much different than last year's run, because last year the bracket fell for Iowa. Iowa had to get the job done, obviously, but they didn't face a seed higher than 5 to get to the, Final Four. It was great. And they did it. But it was kind of like a rise of the innocents, I think is how Jan Jensen put it. You kind of sort of came out of nowhere in some ways. Even though they were a good team, it's like, wow, they actually did it. And then this year, the flip side is they're having to go through the full gauntlet. That West Virginia game, for starters, was insanely tough. And now to think about it, Scott, the Hawkeyes are going to, if they want to win it all, got to go through Kim Mulkey and LSU, the defending national champion. By the way, Iowa beats the defending national champion for the second straight year in the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
That speaks to your story about rising to the occasion, really twice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the greatest coach in women's basketball history, Gino Auriemma. I don't think there's much debate there. I guess you could say Pat Summitt, but just look at the track record. Auriemma is 1,200 wins. And then you'd have to beat probably the AP National Coach of the Year, and which has one loss in the last 2 seasons, and that was still as non-Saley. So they're going to have to earn it, Scott.
And if they play South Carolina again, you don't think they're going to have a mark on them? Last year they were the only team to beat South Carolina, did it in the Final Four, and everybody knows who Caitlin Clark is. Everybody knows who Iowa is, the entourage. I ran into several people here in the hotel. They're so excited. And so they know what they're going up against. It's not just oh, wow, this is a good story with a great player and move on. No, Iowa's a 1 seed. Iowa had to run the gauntlet. Iowa has there are more people that watch Iowa than have ever watched any women's basketball team before, in person and on television. So you have all those factors. There's no hiding. There's no, ain't they quaint Iowa. It's toe to toe. And as you said, tonight they're going against the bluest of blue bloods in UConn. The best program in women's college basketball history, the best coach in history. And in fact, if you put a Mount Rushmore of coaches in college, Dan Gable's on it, of course, but so would Gino Auriemma. So, and to top it off, you have the personal debates. Paige Bueckers played against a lot of these players when they were on the All Iowa attack. She's from Hopkins, Minnesota. UConn picked Paige Bueckers over Caitlin Clark, which I would argue was beneficial to both of them. But hey, any chip you can throw on your shoulder, do it at this time. So I think this is the potential, not only tonight, but the potential for the championship. Rich matchups, not ones that people go, oh well.
Yeah, Friday nights, Scott, are not always the best TV night. Now Monday night for the Hawkeyes and Tigers collected 12.3 million viewers with a peak of 16 million. These are like NFL playoff type numbers almost. Or college football playoff numbers anyway. You're kind of our TV expert here. You love this stuff. You know it. What is put 12.3 million viewers in perspective, and kind of what the draw that Iowa women's basketball clearly, but Iowa is the common thread in the most watched games of all time in the women's sport.
12.3 million. Last year in the regular season, only one college football game passed that, and that was Michigan, Ohio State. So you're basically saying that more people watched Iowa LSU women's basketball than they watched Auburn, Alabama, Army, Navy. Take your pick out of the SEC game of the week, Big Ten game of the week. More people watched that. And yes, it was in a primetime stage. It was a midweek game. It was the only one really going. So what? People have options. People always have options to watch or not watch, and they wanted to. And when you look historically at what this program has done in the recent couple of, in this year and last couple of years, I mean, 7 different platforms have had their highest rated women's basketball game in history with Iowa involved. And you're talking about, NBC, Fox, FS1, ESPN, ABC, BTN, and Peacock, of course. Yep. And to be able to do that on a stage and just continue to rise. And, I was looking at some of these other numbers, like, Iowa, every game but 2 were sold out this year. When they went on the road to actual true road environments, they averaged 7,623 more fans over average at those environments. And there were some pretty good ones. I mean, like Indiana averaged more than 10,000 fans, but they had 17 for Iowa, So right. The list goes on. And so what we saw Monday night, though, was national championship men's side type numbers and discussion points. In fact, probably richer just because of the people who are involved.
Yeah, no question to be. I think we're probably going to, I don't know, what do I know? But I'm going to guess like 14, 15 million tonight. Be my guess. What do you think?
I think that's fair. It's really unpredictable. And it's funny because like Richard Deitch, who's kind of our guru and mostly considered the guru of this stuff. I mean, he way undervalued the Iowa LSU game going in. And he thought maybe 9, and he didn't think it would surpass last year's 9.9 million, which was unbelievable. And then he's like, he finds out, he goes, this number is way bigger than I expected. And so I don't know, Friday night, prime time on Friday night, what's there to watch? Not much. I mean, maybe NBA, maybe MLB to an extent, but I think there's going to be a lot of TVs turned to this. And I'm anxious to see what the final number is. Because again, it's no offense to NC State, at all. They're here. They've got potential to win it all too. I think they're the 4th team out of 4, but still. UConn is a brand. Caitlin Clark is a brand. People like brands. And then you start to go measure up. Caitlin Clark, Paige Bueckers, Gina Auriemma, Iowa, it's just on and on and on and on. And it's like, what kind of storylines do you need? It's that they're already here. You don't even need to build it up. They're organic. That's the best part.
Yeah. And you can watch the 2 best players in the country, battle it out. It's just incredible. I want to say thank you to Heartland Flags and Gifts, which helps us bring you legends and listeners every week on Iowa Everywhere. Heartland Flags and Gifts has you covered with nearly every sport, every team, and every flag. You better have your Iowa women's basketball flag by now, folks. Visit our friends online at heartlandflags.com, or better yet, in store. Still time to go downtown today in Des Moines. Not for us, but you can get there at 3719 Southwest 9th Street in Des Moines. Our latest DRF Sportsbook odds have the Hawkeyes favored by 3. There you go. Nice job, Aiden, putting that up. That line has gone up a little bit, and it's I referenced this before, but Iowa back in Caitlin's freshman year, the COVID year, they get to the Sweet 16. They beat Kentucky to get to, I guess it was in San Antonio, right, the whole time. But and it was like a victory that the Hawkeyes were within single digits during portions of that game. They end up losing by 20. Caitlin Clark with some really prophetic quotes, kind of learning what it takes. She said, we're not really that far off. We can do this. And she promised to get Iowa to Final Four. She not only did 1, she did 2. it's really amazing to see, Scott, especially as you talk to and you learn more about this UConn team. I know a lot of people, are learning about UConn too. They're down to like 6 or 7 players right now, but 5 of them are 5 stars, and the other one is the all-time assist leader in program history and 2-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year. That's going to draw Caitlin Clark. So, really good team.
Yeah.
And you've got Caitlin, you got the 1 5-star, and Sydney Folter, not a top 100 recruit. Kate Martin, not a top 100 recruit. Gabby Marshall, not a top 100 recruit. Hannah Stolke was top 50, barely, but you're talking about, Caitlin Clark really rising the tide for everybody here. And the Hawkeyes have arrived, and they can go toe-to-toe with UConn.
It is amazing in retrospect. You think back 3 years ago, again, that matchup in the bubble down in San Antonio, and UConn won. I don't think anybody anywhere was surprised that UConn won and won decisively, because it's UConn. It's like, hey, we're going to play Alabama in the football playoffs, and you expect to lose. Well, that was the case then. To flip that forward 3 years, and Iowa's favored to beat UConn. They still have Paige Bueckers. She's healthy. I mean, half the team isn't, but she is. That you have the numbers, which of course is tremendous, but it's reality. UConn recruits at a different plane than Iowa does, and for Iowa to get those type of players, although now it's at a different level. You have to have an in-state talent like Caitlin Clark to be able to do that. And when Iowa had somebody of her pedigree in state, she went to UConn and Kia Stokes. So it's to see it kind of go full circle, from where it began, because when they matched up, they were co-freshman of the year. And there was a lot of discussion about who was the better player. And it was really entertaining at that point. And now, Paige Bueckers unfortunately had injuries, and that's been an issue. But this is a rivalry. This is a series that began with an AAU ball, and it's going to continue through the WNBA for a decade plus. And this is your chance on the biggest of stages to see it really grow and take off, and and become that Magic versus Bird, Michigan State, Indiana State type of game.
Yeah, I like what you said there about Magic versus Bird, and it does. I wasn't quite. I was 5 years old then, so I wasn't quite ready for to soak that in. So hopefully, this is kind of what that was like. But you mentioned the Caitlin Paige thing, and Paige was the National Player of the Year as a freshman, so she's really really good. And Gino Auriemma recently said he thought Paige was the best player in the country. So I've kind of had fun with that this week. And, that's like the Jordan thing, and I took that personal. And that became personal to me. And it may not seem like much, and he's kind of tried to walk it back. Like, I didn't really mean that, And but
fine.
She's a master at finding motivation. And you can't really blame Gino for taking Paige Bueckers over Caitlin. I mean, she was the #1 recruit in the country. You really can't take both. But it was hurtful for Caitlin to not be recruited by UConn. That was about the only school that didn't recruit her. So, I mean, what a storybook moment it would be if she could kind of win this matchup, so to speak. It's going to be tough, but if she could, man, you think about the Caitlin Clark story, and you keep thinking there's no way she can top it, and she just does. So it wouldn't surprise me. Anything she does tonight would not surprise me.
Without a doubt. Every time we talk ourselves, or I talk myself into, but this could be tough. This could be, and I always kind of like have to steer my brain back around and say, but she's number 22. You don't bet against number 22 in anything. Just like the other day, more people thought LSU was probably going to win. It was tough to get past a lot of different things. Oh my gosh, look at the rebounding numbers and before and after. Number 22. It just works out that way. And I don't fault Gino one iota for saying his player is better. She's a terrific player. I mean, phenomenal. If the roles were reversed, he'd say the same thing about Caitlin. And I would argue that, the Lord works in mysterious ways. I mean, it really worked out to the benefit of both players, because Caitlin would not have had that kind of freedom in UConn's offense. She wouldn't have been allowed to shoot 40 times. I mean, 20.1 times per game or whatever. She wouldn't have been able to do what she does as effectively. I mean, Lisa Bluter, who doesn't get nearly enough credit as an actual coach, game coach, allows her player to have that kind of freedom to, like she said way back on, I think, Media Day, you don't tell a thoroughbred, whoa, you let them run. And that's what she's doing with Caitlin. Gino coaches it a different way. Again, Paige Bueckers, she would thrive at Iowa too. She would have more freedom. She would be able to do all these things. But I really like the way it turned out. Had to have a local, West Des Moines Dowling graduate be able to do this in the state of Iowa, to elevate women's basketball, to put it on a level that we've never seen before, to where we are, with only 2 weeks left in spring football, and we haven't even mentioned it yet. Because of her, it's at a level we've never seen before and never will again, probably.
Yeah, and Paige, it has announced she will come back for next season, which is honestly great news for women's basketball, because you're not losing both stars to the WNBA. She'll be back next year, and she'll be the face of women's basketball, I would imagine, next season, especially with Angel Reese going pro, Camila Cardoso going pro. There's, Paige will have kind of the show to herself next year. But yeah, she has been. Go ahead.
Yeah, she and Juju Watkins and
and
Hannah Hidalgo, they'll be, but Paige will probably be the problem. Paige and Juju are probably 1A, 1B. They're up there.
Yeah, so I'm saying women's basketball is not going to suffer next year after this. But let's look a little bit more into this matchup, Scott. I kind of referenced kind of the 5-star talent on UConn's roster, but they are thinner. They only played 6 girls in the round of 32. They only played 6 in the Sweet 16. They survived in that one against Duke, survived against Syracuse. They did go to 7 deep against USC, but that's going to be – it could be a factor, Scott, because Iowa does like to draw fouls, get to the line. They run fast. We saw them wear down LSU. Now, UConn, I think, has elite conditioning themselves. These women are playing 40 minutes a game. They're 3 stars. Aaliyah Edwards, Paige Bueckers, Nika Mule, all playing 40 minutes a game, basically. So it's not like you're going to – oh my God, they're just going to be dragging, in the third quarter. But it could be a factor. That's one of the main things I'm watching tonight is, can Iowa get, especially Aaliyah Edwards, into foul trouble? I think they just got to attack the rim and try to draw those fouls, make the officials make those calls.
Yeah, I think it was you who was asking Sida Falter about that yesterday, and that is going to be a major factor in this. I mean, you don't want to make officiating part of it, but the way the game is called, just like balls and strikes, it matters. And if you can draw fouls, if you can get somebody to get 2 fouls in the first quarter or first 8 minutes of the game, and then they've got to play tentative. Look at the other day. This is what blew me away about the win, to be honest with you, was Hannah Stolke. I was like, she has to be able to play in this game. She can't get fouled, and then she gets ding, 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 just constantly, and they're able to survive that, which is just mind-boggling in its own right. But I think if, again, you having so many great players out for the season with injuries, and then they're trying to, and then get somebody in foul trouble, then they have to play more tentative on defense, and then you can attack them. Jeff Woody brought this up when I was talking yesterday on the radio, that at one juncture, when this is with Angel Reese's ankle injury, that he spot on or caught that Lisa was like, run right at her, because she just can't keep up. And that's the way you've got to figure out ways to get advantages on people. And that's the same thing here, is attack the rim. If somebody's got 2 fouls, attack it in the first half. Make them be indecisive. Make them either A, foul you, or just give you the layup. And if that, now I'll flip it a little bit here to Chad and say, while Iowa has players in uniform who can play, their depth is not that much better, especially with Molly Davis out, and they're not going 9-10 deep. Let's put it that way. If they're lucky, they go 8. So, but they still have more bodies, so they could absorb more of that if they needed to.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Scott. Iowa basically went 6 deep against LSU and still outran them to the finish line. Addie O'Grady and Hannah Stolke pretty much platooned at the 5 because of the foul trouble in that game. And then the rest of the girls played 38 plus. Kate Martin and Sydney Folter logged heavy minutes. Caitlin Clark, Gabby Marshall both played 40 minutes in that game. Just going all out. The conditioning of this Iowa team is elite. And I did a story on that earlier in the week. And I was like, what do you guys do to get in such good shape or whatever? And they just practice really hard. They practice really fast. I was lucky enough to do a story on the Gray team earlier this year. And man, they do practice fast. Like, those guys push them, and they're breaking the guys' press and running up and down the floor right from the get-go in practice, So like it's really impressive to see how this team has been coached to play to its strengths. It's the biggest frustration that I think, have covering Iowa football is you just keep doing the same thing every year. But Lisa Bluter, Jan Jensen, everyone else, every year they cater their roster to the strengths and they make radical changes. I mean, they did not expect to be playing this small this year and make Hannah Stolke the 5. They tried to start this season with Sharon Goodman at the 5, with Addie O'Grady at the 5, and Hannah at the 4. But they've evolved. They've evolved from the Molly Davis injury. Like, it's such an impressive coaching job. I think in general, if I was going to win the national title, maybe it was a good thing that Dawn Staley won Coach of the Year, National Coach of the Year, because that's another little chip I think that Iowa can sort of pocket away, versus if South Carolina, if Bluter had been National Coach of the Year, which would have been deserved, but then you've got Dawn Staley playing that card. Oh, look at, Caitlin, National Player of the Year, Blue, this is, you could see her playing that motivational card. I don't know. I could just see all this coming together for Iowa is what I'm saying. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Lisa and everyone else, just how they've gotten Iowa to this point. It's really impressive.
No question. And I think you said it. This is the difference that we've seen between Iowa women's basketball and football. Last year with football, with all the injuries, what if Lisa was in that position? Well, then they're probably running Wildcat because they don't have anybody to throw the freaking ball.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead, no, we're just going to do what we do, and we're winning, so who cares? And no, I mean, with Iowa, they went in the portal. They looked for people to play the post to replace Monica Zanano. They did not find a fit, and culture is paramount. Which is, hey, they're in the Final Four. They're above criticism now, in my eyes. Now, yeah, maybe they'll struggle, say, if they get to Sunday. Well, we'll worry about Sunday. And even then, you lost the national title game. Big deal. I think when you look at this is, okay, and so they did try, as you said, Sharon Goodman didn't work out. Hannah Stolke was the 4. Instead, we've got 4 great guards. Let's run them to death. And so then what do? They lead the nation in scoring. But they're also really good in field goal percentage and defense. What they do is they apply so much pressure on offense that teams try to keep up, and then they miss these shots, and then they're just continually running in transition, and then of course burying shots in transition. I mean, 11 per game, which is the most in the country, and so then it's just this workout that nobody can keep up with, and that's what the hallmark of a good coach. And I'll even take this back, Chad, for about over almost 15 years, that Lisa, they provide the foundation. This is how we want to play, but we play through our best player on the floor. Cash Alexander, Samantha Logic, Allie Disterhoff, Megan Gustafson, Kathy Doyle, Caitlin Clark. You're talking about true point guard in Sam Logic, true post center in Megan Gustafson, great forwards like Cash Alexander, and of course the best player of all time in Caitlin Clark as a guard. they're running their offense through those people. And then you got a Monica Sonano who scored 2,400 points. So you still have other pieces that work with them. But that, to me, is the hallmark of coaching. Provide the foundation. This is how we want to play. We're going to play this way, which is why you've recruited those players. Then to be able to adapt, to fit those strengths, to maximize your product. And that's probably the most frustrating thing, as you said, with football. That, hey, sometimes you need to right turn, Clyde. You need to do something a little different.
Yeah. Hey, Tim Lester reference on the women's basketball show, right? Well, who knows? Maybe the Tim Lester era will change that a little bit. Yeah, when they had Megan Gustafson, they ran, they learned the Chicago Bulls triangle offense with her and Hannah Stewart because they had a really capable 4 and an elite 5, and they did that. And now they're in the 4-out offense. And, I remember talking to Caitlin last May. This was the last one-on-one I've had with her. I mean, I think the only one-on-one since, for the most part, has been Robin Roberts. I mean, pretty much since the summer. So, very. But anyway, I go back to that because I remember her telling me way back in May, like she said, I'm having Hannah Stuelke watch Golden State Warriors games because I want her to play like Draymond Green. Like, we can get out and run, and she can be a small 5. And that's how the Golden State Warriors play. And it's like, yes, and Caitlin gets it too. And they all got it, and they figured it out. They tried the others, they tried to make it work with a bigger post. Like you said, worry about Sunday when you get to Sunday. But the other thing about this matchup, Scott, I talked to Jenny Fitzgerald yesterday, who has the UConn scout, and she's like, they play really similar to us. They play 4 guards. Aaliyah Edwards is basically an athletic 5. Like Hannah is. You've got the superstars, you've got the shooters, and you've got 4-guard lineups against 4-guard lineups. Like, this is like, good on good, great on great. It's going to be such an entertaining matchup to see, how Iowa defends Paige Bueckers, because we pretty much expect Nika Mule, the Big East Defensive Player of the Year, is going to probably be on Caitlin, and she's 5'11", so she's got enough height to maybe give Caitlin some problems. I assume they're going to do some stuff with her. But how does Iowa stop Paige Bueckers? That's the one thing I've seen so many UConn fans pipe in and say they can't stop Paige. Like, she's going to eat Gabby Marshall alive. I'm not totally convinced of that. I'm excited to see it, though, Scott.
Yeah. Having somebody eat somebody alive like that, I don't quite buy that. But yeah, she's going to get her points. I mean, she's really good. She averages 22 a game. If she gets 22 points, I feel pretty secure that Iowa's going to have a really good chance to win. And I know the kind of player Gabby Marshall is, how much confidence she has on that end of the floor, and how it has grown over the course of the tournament. When, even in the course of that game against West Virginia, you gradually saw her go from playing, I won't say tentative, but off the ball, and gradually just got closer and closer and closer and got more aggressive and talked more, which you know what, you need to do that. You need to have your swagger out there, and you could tell. And then she makes one of the biggest plays in Iowa sports history when she has that block on J.J. Quinterly. And then, of course, Sydney Falter takes the rebound and drives up the floor and gets the and one. And also within that, and kind of back to our little bit of our previous conversation, when Molly Davis goes down, instead of trying to play this exact same way, they plug in, maybe Kylie Feuerbach is just or even Taylor McCabe are a little more guard types, 1/2, and you could play the same type of game. Instead, they decided, let's put the best player, and that's Sydney Falter, who is positionless. She could play the 4, she could play the 2. On defense, she could defend against probably 4 or 5 positions, and is just Chicago tough and aggressive, and will dive and do everything you need her to do. And they put her in there, and they've been better. I mean, she went from averaging 7 points a game and during the season to when, after Molly's injury, she's been averaging 13. So, that's 3 more baskets per game for her, or 2 baskets and 2 more free throws per game. That to me has been a remarkable turnaround with this team. and something that's been really impressive.
Well, folks, there's plenty of time before tonight's tip-off. You got forever still. You've got almost 12 hours. So you got time to run out and get a bottle of Steeple Ridge Bourbon. We want to thank our friends at Steeple Ridge for their support of Legends and Listeners. Steeple Ridge delivers a high-quality, delicious drinking, award-winning craft bourbon. We'll be working tonight, so we can't do it, Scott. But but our fans out there can. So if you don't find Steeple Ridge at your favorite retailer, ask for it by name. Steeple Ridge is distilled, aged, and bottled in Erling, Iowa by Lonely Oak Distillery. All right, want to give you a couple questions here, Scott, and we can both give our answers. What gives you the most pause about tonight's matchup from the Hawkeyes' perspective?
Turnovers. It's an aspect that if Iowa turns the ball over, if Nika Mule gets after Caitlin, and Caitlin has the potential to throw the ball away, to get tripped up, and she's approached, I hate to say it, quadruple double territory with turnovers once in a while. And if that happens and UConn runs the other way, then it could be a real challenge, because this is not a team that you can just say, well, we'll come back. It's not Nebraska. I mean, you're talking about an elite team. And so to me, that's where I land. How about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's really just, it's the legendary program. It's kind of the uniform, like Jan Jensen said yesterday, like sometimes tradition can get you 10 give you 10 points, and they're the New York Yankees of women's basketball. I put that in my column. I mean, that it's the team when you face the Yankees, it's like, okay, you just like you got to be on your game. And this is a UConn team that, from my research, is very fundamentally sound. That shouldn't surprise you. They don't take possessions off, so it's not like I don't want to say LSU kind of loafed or anything like that, but you could tell they took their foot off the gas at times against Iowa. Maybe they didn't have gas because Iowa wore them down, but
no.
UConn is not going to. They are coached to play hard for 40 minutes, disciplined defense for 40 minutes. They're not going to make mistakes. They're almost like Iowa football with great players, like it is Alabama football. I like what you said about that. I think that's probably the best comparison, more so than the Yankees. So it's just going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. Iowa's going to have to play. I don't want to say a perfect game, but they're going to have to play one of their best games to get the win. So that just gives you pause. I mean, Iowa's played 2 great games in Albany. But at the same time, Scott, now let's flip it to the other, to the positive here. What gives you more encouragement about this game? Iowa in this spot last year rose to the occasion as a 12.5 point underdog against South Carolina, got the outright win. Tonight they're favored by 3 or 2.5, depending where you look, but 3 on DRF. So what gives you the most encouragement now about this game tonight?
Well, when you look at the statistics, Chad, all the main numbers favor Iowa. And that's through the course of an entire season. Not only lead the nation in scoring, they're in a great conference. They're in a better conference than UConn is. The Big East is a good conference, don't get me wrong. And this is UConn, so I'm not dissing them. But when you look at who they've played and who they've lost to teams that Iowa's is, except for South Carolina, are teams that Iowa's equal to or better than. Rebounding margin, Iowa's 25th, +7. They're +5.8. That was a real concern for me going against LSU with Iowa, that their rebounding margin was the second and the best in the country, and it was proven out in that game. And that seemed to me to be the one fear factor I'd have. But Iowa, slightly better assist to turnover ratio. Iowa, much better when it comes to 3-pointers per game, 11 versus 7. They average a full turnover per game more than UConn, but that's one. That's one that they can give up. But they're granted, they give up a lot more points, but they play a lot more possessions too. And up-tempo teams and teams that score 91 points sometimes give up more points. So I think that everything really favors Iowa in that direction.
The thing I really like about this Iowa team is they, and I want to give credit to Bluter again on this. She has helped use every experience of this season to have them ready for this moment. And you could even go back to last season. Like she even has said, the Final Four last year was new to us. We didn't realize how demanding the schedule could be. And it is demanding. It was a short turnaround from Monday night to Friday here.
Yeah.
It's game day, and they've barely had time. I mean, they had time to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but that's about it. As far as, enjoyment, they have to be locked in, but they also are wired to want it all. I think last year was like, oh, that was a neat story. Like, oh, they made it to the title game. But this, that motivated them. They were so close and they didn't get there. And with Caitlin Clark, she has channeled her determination into the others. And I really see that especially with Martin, Fulter, and Marshall. Marshall said after the LSU game, I've never wanted to win a game more in my life. Marshall has had some pretty strong quotes this week. Like, we know we're great. We just have to go out and show it. Like, this is a really confident team. She waved goodbye to Angel Reese. I mean, I love the swagger that this team is playing with. You've got Kate Martin on your side. I don't want to say like it was different. I will say it. It was different last year. With Monica Sonano, she like kind of rolled with the punches. She was like, oh, like, it's not a criticism of her, but her mentality was like, it was a great experience. But with Caitlin Clark, Kate Martin, Gabby Marshall, Sydney Folger, they want to win. I mean, they are like determined to win this game. They are not satisfied. They're absolutely not satisfied. And they are playing the best basketball of their lives collectively. So that gives me a lot of confidence going into tonight.
It's a great point, Chad. And the difference is, and I think it's, it's reflected by the fan base a little bit too, is that last year was pinch me, am I dreaming? We're at the Final Four, and you see, the red carpet treatment and just wow, everybody's here for us. This is great. We're in the Final Four. We won, and we're going to the championship game, and it's like a once in a lifetime experience. Well, this year you figured out it's not a once in a lifetime experience. You could do it again. And why didn't you win last year? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Well, let's work on those reasons. And, some of the examples that you said with Kate Martin is exactly why she's going to be a phenomenal coach. I mean, people have said, who's going to be Lisa Bluter? Last night I was at dinner with like our entire women's basketball staff. There's like 9 of us here. And somebody said, who's going to replace her? I said, Kate Martin. And to me, once her basketball career is over with, go get on at a small D1, like my alma mater, Western Illinois, and go there 2 or 3 years, take your team to the tournament, and then who knows, then lead the Iowa Hawkeyes to the next level. But I think the confidence, the swagger, the toughness, the mental toughness that they have is different than last year because, as we said, Chad, this whole season is, if you were not mentally strong, they would have cracked a hell of a long time ago.
For sure. That was one of my biggest fears about this team. Not fears, but like there's no way they can, like, there's so much pressure night after night. Yeah. It's got to hit a wall at some point, and they really haven't.
No. I compared it in my column to 2010 Iowa football, where the year before, Orange Bowl champion, 11-2, you got Stanza, you got Claiborne, you got all these people coming back. You're ranked in the top 10 to start the season. Everybody's got you in their sights, and they didn't have enough depth. Well, this team has lost some depth too. Then they lost a lot of close games, and it just kind of mentally crashed on them. That could have happened here. Look at all the fans everywhere they go. Everywhere they go, there's people waiting for them. They're the Beatles. They're the, for old people like us. And then there's Taylor Swift for younger people. And yet they always rise to the occasion. They've been able to do that. Yeah, they've lost a few games. They lost, late game collapses against, Ohio State and Nebraska. They got beat at Indiana, and rightly so. And that's not the worst thing in the world, because Indiana was a pretty good team too, but by virtue of almost beating South Carolina. All that built to this point in their lives, and they are more than prepared for it.
Yeah, I mean, those fourth quarter collapses, if you will, prepare them, for made them realize you can't take your foot off the gas. They definitely took their foot off the gas at Nebraska, especially. Mm-hmm. I think Ohio State just kind of overwhelmed them with Cody McMahon in that game. But at Nebraska, they took their foot off the gas a little bit, lost that game. They've learned from that. We saw that every time LSU made it, kind of chipped away the other night, Caitlin or somebody had an answer. Kate Martin was phenomenal in the second half. So yeah, I'm with you there. What do you think about the crowd? Like, I don't have a feel. I'm excited to see what the crowd's going to be like tonight in Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. The extra night of uncertainty, like if Iowa would make the Final Four, I wonder if that will tamp down the Hawkeye presence in the crowd. But I don't know. What are you feeling on the crowd tonight? Because Iowa did have a home court edge, I feel like, in Albany.
And talking to a few people here that they felt like Iowa would still have a home court advantage, that they would have not only their fans who are here, but the locals that have bought tickets that are coming are going to be more pro Iowa, more pro Big Ten. And so, but UConn will also have a substantial base here as well. So my guess is it's probably going to be like 50% Iowa, 40%, 35 to 40% UConn, and then the rest will just be people who bought tickets and come into the game and will cheer either way. Just excited to be at a national or Final Four. So I expect Iowa to still show out, and it is fascinating because true Ohio State fans are really gritting their teeth because they don't like Iowa at all. They hate Iowa in women's basketball. They're a rival, and it's true. They feel that way. But Big Ten sometimes rises to the top, and it's been Purdue, I think, in '99 was the last women's team. I mean, I know Maryland won it under Brenda Freese, but they were in the ACC at that point. I think Purdue was like the last time, '99 or 2000, somewhere back then.
Yeah, I mean, it had been a long time that the Big Ten had a Final Four team even for a while. So Iowa's, been holding the Big Ten banner here for a while. Let's talk a little bit, Scott, before we go, about what if Iowa wins tonight, the national championship game. Can Iowa beat South Carolina? The line on that game, the early line would be South Carolina minus only 4.5. So I feel like that's a lot of respect for the Hawkeyes, the unbeaten Gamecocks. I'm not going to say Iowa's going to win, but I like Iowa's chance to compete in that game just because Iowa will have been more battle tested, honestly, than South Carolina. I mean, they basically roll over everybody, and they've got a young roster, and we've seen them, get pushed to the limits here, even by Indiana a couple of weeks ago. And Oregon State, was right there with them. And so I feel like this is not last year's South Carolina team. And Iowa has the confidence that it beat them before. I'm assuming it's going to be South Carolina. Could be NC State, obviously, but let's assume it is South Carolina. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, at the surface, you kind of like, again, just kind of shift. Let's go to South Carolina. South Carolina is going to win because South Carolina is undefeated. They have the best coach and, the best big in the country in Cardoza. Then you start to go, well, how have they played in this tournament? And when you look specifically at the Indiana game, they took their foot off the gas and Indiana went right at their throat. And Indiana, if there had been 3 more minutes to that game, Indiana would have won that game. They were that, and Iowa knows what Indiana is capable of. Iowa blew out Indiana. Indiana blew out Iowa. And so, as you've said, we've said, they've taken every step of the season. This is the smartest thing that they do is a learning experience from them. When the Kansas State debacle way back in November, they realized first of all, you're going to have to go 4 guards. Second of all, Caitlin's our star. She's going to make things happen, but we can't just automatically defer to her every time and then when she has a bad game, we have to step up and, make up for that because that game, both Gabby and Kate were dreadful. I don't even know if they scored or if they did, it was like 2 points. So they learned from that. They learned from the other experiences in the Big Ten. They also learned from their wins the other night against LSU. You're going to face a similar type post situation in playing South Carolina, a dominant post, as good as there is in the country. How do you prevent Hannah from getting into foul trouble that early? Well, they take the game plan back to what didn't work against LSU and apply it. As much as South Carolina will be very motivated, they have 5 new starters from last year. They're not. There's not a Leah Boston out there. They've got different players, so they're going to have people who didn't really experience it, or if they did it in different ways. And there might be an intimidation factor there on their count. Wow, there's Caitlin Clark, and Don Staley won't be that way, but they might be that way. I'm not predicting it yet, but I'm saying that Iowa has no intimidation factor at all. Iowa will wing it. Iowa will have no. And so if Iowa gets out there, I'll revert, like I've said all along, I'll revert back to number 22. Can't bet against her.
No, I would not at this point. I like Iowa to win tonight, Scott. I think Iowa wins and covers. I think they go to the national title game. I'm going to say they win by 5.
Okay. I have them. Everybody at The Athletic picked Iowa. I picked Iowa 83-79 a couple days ago. I think that they win by a couple possessions. It's going to be a challenge all the way through, but a couple free throws late seals it. And then I have South Carolina in a tough win. I'm like the only one who picked it close against NC State. But so rematch from the Final Four last year.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That would be Sunday, by the way, on ABC at 2:00, and that will probably set even more viewership records if that is the matchup. We know ESPN would love to see Iowa in the title game. That would be, its ideal scenario, even more so than UConn, South Carolina. Iowa versus anybody would be ESPN's preference. Let's talk real quick, Scott, since we're a Big Ten show, about the men's Final Four. Pretty awesome that we're like, men's basketball and football are like complete afterthoughts here. But could this be a Big Ten weekend, Scott? Could we see, the Big Ten cut down the nets in the women's and in the men's tournament? I think it's possible. Like, I know UConn seems unbeatable on the men's side, but I really like how this Purdue team is playing. And, heck, UConn getting over there late, with the playing situation. I'm happy for Matt Painter. First time since 1980, back when Leicester was in the Final Four against Purdue in the consolation game. The Boilers are back. I don't know. What do you think about the men's Final Four? Who wins it?
At this point, I'm still leaning towards UConn, but I'm leaning UConn versus Purdue. And, we cover the Big Ten. So I'd like to see the Big Ten win. And hey, the rise of the Big Ten West, baby. If you get Iowa and Purdue both winning titles, and then the rise of the conference as a whole, when you have Michigan winning a championship in football, and then you have really the 3 most prominent sports in the country collegiately.
Yeah, great point.
And then locally, wrestling matters in Iowa. So then you have Penn State. I don't know that doesn't help everybody there thinking about that, but we get to know these coaches over the years, as you said, and Matt Painter's been a stand-up guy for all of his career. I've really enjoyed covering him. He always has great comments. He's always, direct in answering your question in a good fashion. And Zach Edey's been, the player of the year. I would really like to see, Purdue deserves it. I know we used to joke with back in the old days of Legends and Leaders that they were the most hated rival. But I think outside of the Jeff Brom factor and Charlie Jones going there, I think Purdue's been the one team that, most Iowa fans have probably hated least.
Well, just for the heck of it, I'll go Purdue. I'll pick Purdue to win it all.
Right.
They got a little bit easier, I feel like, matchup in the Final Four. So I think Alabama could give UConn some problems. We'll see. They can score.
Yeah.
Our buddy Kennington Smith gets to go cover Bama in the playoff and now in the Final Four. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I talked to Kennington yesterday about some stuff, but now he's not there. But still, it's
still his team.
Yeah, right.
His new team. Anyway, for Scott Dochterman, this is Chad Leistikow. Thanks for joining us on this Hello Cleveland edition of Legends and Listeners from the Channel Seed Studios. Enjoy the game tonight and possibly on Sunday as well. Talk to you next week here on the Iowa Everywhere Network.